Turning now to our top story, King Charles, Queen Camilla have arrived in Sydney to kickstart that royal tour.
This, His Majesty's biggest overseas trip since that cancer diagnosis earlier this year. For more, let's bring in royal commentator Victoria Arbiter in Melbourne. Nice to see you, Victoria. This visit gives a real sense of King Charles being back in business, doesn't it? How significant is it?
Good morning to both of you. Well, this trip is hugely significant, particularly when you consider that it is his first visit to one of the 14 Commonwealth realms for which he serves as head of state since his accession. His late mother famously set numerous records, established multiple firsts, but upon setting foot on Australian soil last night, the King established his own first, becoming the very first male head of state to visit Australia. So that is exciting as well. Now, this visit is going to be all about showcasing the very best that Australia has to offer. He's going to be keen to meet and celebrate as many everyday Australians as humanly possible, while also promoting and really getting ahead the initiatives that are most meaningful to him and also to his hosts.
Hey, good to see you, Victoria. Buckingham Palace says a lot of thought has gone into, and I want to read from this quote, balancing the program to preserve the King's energy. So how different does this trip look to other trips here to Australia and abroad?
Well, this trip is going to bear all the hallmarks of a traditional royal tour, whether it's meeting dignitaries and local Indigenous leaders, walkabouts. He'll be laying a wreath at the Australian War Memorial and conducting a review of the fleet alongside his other engagements. But yes, as you point out, given his cancer diagnosis, aides really have had to consider a much broader picture here in terms of planning the schedule. Anyone who follows the royals knows that the King is a workaholic. To a fault, his wife has previously said she has always wanted him to calm down a little bit, but he just wants to keep going and going and going until he can't go anymore. But because he has paused his cancer treatment to be here, aides are very mindful that they need to factor in the necessary rest for someone that is still undergoing treatment. He's 75, he'll be 76 next month. He's travelled multiple time zones. It's going to really be a test of stamina given that he's going to be conducting 24 engagements over a relatively short space of time. So I think it is very good that today is a rest day and that rest has been factored into what is a very busy schedule given how far he's come.
Victoria, this tour comes at a rather crucial time for the monarchy as King Charles works to maintain support here in Australia. How important is it for royals to be seen out and about here?
Well, in 1970, actually, it was the late Queen who coined this phrase that she needs to be seen to be believed. And it is a view that is very much shared by her son. And he's cognizant of the fact that it's been since 2011 that the head of state has visited Australia. The Queen, the late Queen, was here back then. So he understands that he needs to be out and about. Of course, trips like this do reignite the debate over the merits of a head of state that lives many thousands of miles away. But the King also understands that he is here at the will of the people. He's here upon the invitation of the Australian Prime Minister. And as long as the will of the people wants him to fulfil his role as ceremonial head of state, he'll continue to do that. If at any point the people decide they want Australia to become a republic, he will honour that and he will respect that. Until such time, he'll continue to fulfil the obligations he has as King of Australia to the very best of his abilities.
Victoria, as always, lovely chatting. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for being with us.
Yes, good morning to you all. We begin this hour with royal history. The King and Queen touching down in Sydney overnight.
And it is the first time Charles has visited Australia as monarch and also the first time a reigning king has seen us on our shores.
Today, correspondent Lara Vella is on Royal Watch at Admiralty House in Sydney. Good morning to you, Lara. What is on the itinerary today?
Sophie and Clint, a very good morning to you once again. Well, today, of course, is officially a rest day for the King and Queen, and they have certainly earned it after their long-haul flight, touching down yesterday evening just before 8:30 in Sydney. There has been plenty of activity outside Admiralty House here in Sydney this morning, but not from the royal couple, in fact from officers from the Australian Federal Police, because we know there is a very tight security presence that will be following them every step of the way during their royal tour down under. And also, I have to say, lots of curious locals here in Kirribilli who have been asking us if we have caught a glimpse of the King and Queen. No sign of them just yet. I dare say that perhaps they're having a bit of a sleep in, or maybe even enjoying a bit of a stroll around the gardens of Admiralty House. It was really quite the welcome for them last night. Soggy skies in Sydney, but nonetheless, as you might say, that did not dampen spirits, because there to welcome them was the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, the Premier, and 12-year-old cancer survivor Kai alongside his sister Charlotte. She, in fact, donated some of her bone marrow towards his treatment. And that was Kai's dream, to meet their Majesties in person. It was all thanks to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And last night that came true. He had the opportunity to present Her Majesty the Queen with some flowers. We spoke to the pair of them a little bit earlier.
I bowed to the King and then I shook his hand. He was mainly talking about how the weather wasn't so good.
Oh, was he? What about Queen Camilla? Did she say hello as well?
Yes, she said hi, and I gave her the flowers, which was really nice. She said the flowers, it was really beautiful.
So if you would like your very own opportunity to see the King and Queen in person, Sydney-siders, get ready, because tomorrow that will happen for you. From 11:30, we know that the royal couple will in fact be holding a meet and greet at St Thomas's Anglican Church in North Sydney. But given that the weather is looking like it's going to be pretty good, Sophie and Clint, no rain, a few grey clouds though, we dare say it's going to be a very big turnout to welcome the royal couple. So the advice is to get there nice and early if you want to see them in the flesh tomorrow.
And our Today correspondent, royal correspondent, Lara Vella, is all across it.
Well, King Charles and Queen Camilla are this morning waking up in Sydney as their highly anticipated royal tour begins.
And security will be incredibly tight during their Majesty's 4 days on the ground, with state and federal police launching this major operation for the duration of the visit.
For more, let's bring in former Royal Protection Officer Simon Morgan in London. Simon, good morning to you. Thanks for your time. You know the ins and outs of these royal tours better than anyone else. How much planning goes into a visit like this?
Good morning, Sophie. Good morning, Clint. Yes, this was probably on the planning table for some time, maybe going back as late as last year, just after the coronation. So a lot goes into this. There have been a lot of recce's with the UK team coming over and working with their Australian counterparts, and also working with the government as well. They're the major stakeholders on both sides. They would agree the itinerary, and then both security details would work on the security plan to make sure that the threat and risks are all being covered.
Hey Simon, good to see you, mate. The royal couple, we know, have a number of public engagements. I dare say these are sort of considered fairly low risk.
I mean, any time you put a senior member of the royal family in the public domain, that is most probably the highest risk that we could get, because you're going into a scenario whereby, as much as you've put every level of control in, you are still putting a senior member of the royal family in direct contact with the member of the public. And therefore, you're working all the way through that threat and risk matrix, concerning from international terrorism at the top, through to the fixated threat, and then the single cause issue, people who will use the world's media to highlight their cause. And certainly, I always feel that that's a very dangerous situation, because some of those actions could be deemed to be hostile rather than a demonstration.
Given the state of the King's health on this visit, are you surprised that it's going ahead?
Not when you take into account the King's personality and wanting to do these things. I should imagine that the tour has been planned with his health considerations, and certainly there will be contingencies in relation to his health, as there always is on any royal trip. Contingencies around medical are extremely important and always form part of your plan, but I should imagine they are simply more at the forefront on this tour than they would have been on other tours.
It was 1994, I believe, when those blank shots were fired at King Charles on our shores here in Australia. I mean, do moments like that come into the planning today?
They have to. You have to learn from history. If you don't learn from history, then you're failing to learn. And every incident, even going back to Marcus Sargent, who fired a starting pistol at the Queen during Trooping the Colour, that changed the way that those events were policed. Previously, you used to have police officers that would have their backs, would face kind of the Queen, because it would deem to be discourteous to turn your back. Now, all police officers face the crowd, because that's where the ultimate threat is. So you do look at all these incidences, and you do learn from them to make sure that it can't happen again.
So those officers on the ground, when it's like a walkabout, what are they looking out for?
Oh, you're looking for what you expect to see, and you're looking for what you don't expect to see. This is where, as an experienced protection officer, you have the training, you have the experience, you have those frame of references. You know, you're looking for people's behaviour. You're looking for danger cues. How are people's facial expressions? Is somebody not enjoying this moment? You know, you have to kind of question that as to whether they are there to do some harm, or indeed they don't understand what's going on because they could be blind. So at that moment, they may not know that the king's right in front of them. You know, and again, you're looking at a scenario whereby an overreaction is as bad as an underreaction.
Absolutely. Let's hope for a safe voyage for the King and Queen here to our shores. Simon Morgan in London, thank you so much for your insight.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?